down there. It's being magnified now because this event is now shedding light on it. Are there a lot of great things that go on in Charleston? Yes. Do they have a lot of issues? Yes. When you think of it, the mayor of Charleston has been the mayor for 40 years.
Okay, how can that possibly be good? We've seen that in Chicago with the installment of the Daley family, how when someone's entrenched in office that long, progress tends to be stalled at some point. 40 years?
Because, the mayor is the spokesperson for the city. He's a symbol of the city. You have a mayor. I'm 44 years old. This guy has been in office 40 years.
Wow.
So, I mean, when you look at those type of things, and then you have politicians come on, and of course they're appalled by this. Everybody's appalled by the crime, but it's what are you doing when these things are not happening to help African American people out of their situation? What are you doing to help poor people? Are you bringing jobs into those communities? Are you giving them the proper education? Are you giving them vocational trade options in their schools? A lot of white people feel like they're not racist just because they're not hanging black people from trees or they're not doing some of these other heinous acts. But every time certain pieces of legislation come up, they vote against it. They won't bring certain businesses into our communities. I mean, there's a lot of ways to keep a person, oppressed.
Yes.
And, to sit up there in front of the public and then say, well, we have no idea where this comes from. Well, you help create this culture. This young man, I'm sure when they delve into his background, he's going to be a kid who was probably picked on. I'm sure he's got some form of mental illness. And that is how these racist organizations like the skinheads, the neo-Nazis, and the KKK, they prey on these individuals. Just as we have the problem with urban gangs in our community, they prey on certain kids who don't come from a strong family background, kids who maybe are getting picked on. It's the exact same process.
Well, actually, I'm reading here. It's saying, and this is because when you said mental illness, and I'm pretty sure that's going to come into play at some point. But I was reading here that he told the police that he almost didn't go through with it because everyone was being so nice to him. So if you had the capacity to sit and even second guess what you were going to do because everyone was being so nice to him at the church, but then he ultimately decided to go through with it, I don't know is that a mental illness? I mean, you were reasoning. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you almost had the empathy to not do it.
We're talking with Jason Conan Palmer, who's a freelance reporter for the Chicago Crusader and other media outlets. He's joining the conversation to discuss the backdrop of a tragic shooting that happened in South Carolina, in Charleston, that left 9 people dead. It's interesting because the conversation about mental illness is going to enter the picture. I know that it is. It can't help but to enter the picture. And Jason, you said something that I think is extremely crucial, that when they begin to dig into his life, profile him, you're going to probably find that he was this kid that was disadvantaged, and individuals like that are ripe for the picking.
Sure.
For the Ku Klux Klan.
They're easily influenced.
And the fact that he was there, it'll be interesting to see if he has any ties to this. And this is the kind of stuff that, even though organizations like the KKK seem like they're obsolete, believe it or not, they have had a resurgence in the last 10 years.
They're alive and well. They have. In the Aryan Nation, all those groups.
In the last 10 years, a huge resurgence. I watched a special on the History Channel. And there was a guy who said how he got involved in it, very much like the profile you talked about that Dylan Roof potentially could be, and how it was so easy to bring him into the fold because just like gangs, it seems like they're a family.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see this in a state, obviously, where, racism has been an issue, segregation. You talked about how it was the largest slave port. So you're talking about so many factors. So when you've talked to your family and friends that are there, what is the overall climate like? I mean, I'm sure people have to be in shock.
Right now, the climate is one of sadness. At this point, the immediate threat is over because he has been captured. So now you're going to start seeing different psychological stages come through that are associated with grief. One of those being shock. You're going to start seeing anger here. It's now 48 hours later. You're going to start seeing anger come into play. You're going to start, it's not real yet for a lot of people. It will start getting real when the funeral services obviously start taking place. The memorials start taking place. Obviously, I'll be down there tonight, and I'll be down there through Monday. So I'll probably start seeing some of the different stages of grief manifest themselves from a psychological standpoint. Now, I actually have family members that went to this church. Maya.
Okay.
We haven't discussed that. I actually have an aunt and a couple of cousins that are members of this church. Now, they were not there the night of this, but, you know, in most black churches, Wednesday night Bible study, that's pretty much all around the country, you know, and it just so happened that they were not there. But they know everyone in there who was murdered. You know, they know every one of them. One of my aunts went to high school with a couple of the victims. One of the victims, the Daphne Middleton doctor, is actually an extended cousin of mine somewhere down the line because it's Charleston. So, you know, most people are kind of linked in there.
Right.
But what you're going to start seeing is you're going to start seeing the grief from the people, even if it wasn't their immediate family, because it's somebody that, you know, they know. It's something that happened in their city. So, you know, I'm very concerned with the mental aspect of people.
Absolutely.
I talked to my cousin whose wedding is scheduled for Sunday. And, you know, I'm trying to keep her focused that this is supposed to be the happiest day of her life. And, you know, her family members, we're coming down there to help her celebrate. But there's going to be a cloud over this wedding now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because of this. I mean, you can't help but not acknowledge it, you know. And I did talk to her, and I think she's actually going to put something in her wedding program to acknowledge, you know, what happened over at Emmanuel, because she knows some of the people, and, you know, so does her future husband and his family. So that's the mindset of people right now. I'll get a better idea of it once I'm actually in the environment. But, you know, it's going to be typical of what you saw in Columbine. It's going to be typical of what you saw the people
in Aurora,
in Sandy Hook. You know, this is a shocking event to happen. And, you know, just as you were saying earlier, how, you know, Dylan is a kid who was ripe for the picking. It's the same thing with local gangs. It's the same thing that we see with Al-Qaeda, same thing we see with ISIL. You know, a lot of this is they recruit via social media groups. You have people who feel left out.
Marginalized,
They want to find an excuse on why they're not socially, you know, applicable. Well, you know, why they don't have friends, why they can't have a girlfriend. You know, the thing I found that was most disturbing was, you know, this I don't even want to call him a young man, but, you know, Ruth basically told the witness who he let go that, you know, he was doing this because black men are raping
white,
you know, their women. To me, you know, just from a psychological standpoint, that was a key statement for me.
It was a very key statement.
What did he actually mean by that? Did he have a relative or a girl he really wanted that she didn't like him and he chose a black man? You know, where did he come up with this? You know, so there are a lot of keys if you kind of read between the lines.
A lot of keys.
You know, that this guy, obviously he was mentally disturbed, because you have to be mentally disturbed to murder a human being.
Well, here's the thing, and one of the things
to murder 9 people, you have to be completely
exactly, and that was one of the things that Nikki and I had talked about in preparing for the show. Is that one of the things? Your background's in psychology. I'm working towards my doctorate in psychology, and one of the things that we talk about is that people who can commit crimes like this have a key factor missing in their overall psychological makeup, which is empathy. And that's something you develop as a child when you're very young. You have experience with people. You learn how to sympathize with them, how to feel sorry for them. But often people who can commit heinous crimes, who can take a life, one of the key things they tend to miss is empathy. So I'll be curious as this unfolds for him to hear what his story is. And you're right, that's a key statement. And I'm going to add a layer to this. It either means, you're right, he maybe liked some young woman who chose someone else, or 2, he looks at a lot of the interracial interactions and datings of men. He probably sees more of that and feels like, I can't have someone because you have her. It'll be interesting to see how this dynamic really unfolds. Unfortunately, I hate to see it has to unfold because of this.
Sure.
It's sad, but it's time this country wakes up and understands that disenfranchised and marginalized people are not just black people, and some people will choose to act out. When you talk about the likes of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, look at the amount of people who are defecting to go join these French terrorist groups abroad.
And they're all white.
So think about that. If that doesn't raise a red flag, like what in this country, as we say, the greatest country in the world, what makes you want to leave the comfort of your homeland, your family, to go align yourself with people that you know hate the essence of who you are? That's a large statement. This goes beyond gun control. And that's
wait. And the interesting thing about that, you know, is that most of these people that are being recruited by Al-Qaeda are actually white people. And I'm like, you know, if anyone you would think would be trying to harm the United States, it would be our people, based off of the way we've been treated here. Here you have white people who are willing to go against the country. It's just, the disenfranchisement and the sense of entitlement of some Americans, leads to this type of chaos, unfortunately. But I think, the Southern Poverty Law Group has also said that there's been a rise of hate crimes since a rise in the number of people who are visiting hate websites and joining these Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazis ever since Obama was elected. They've seen an increase.
Yes, and that was another thing. That's a whole.
You know what? Rhetoric.
That's a whole nother show.
Slightly veiled in the media. I'm not going to call out any particular media outlets, but we all know the ones that are out there. Right. And it's the little sly comments they make. It's the little small things that they constantly do. And with the psychology background, if you constantly keep giving these subliminal messages over time, consistently, it builds up in the mindset of people.
Very true.
And they start lashing out at who they think is responsible for their own unhappiness.
There you go. All right, Jason, thank you for checking into the show. I'm not going to hold you any later. I'm definitely going to have you back on because I know this story is going to unfold, and I would like to definitely have you back on to give your thoughts on kind of everything that's happening. So thank you for checking into the Maya Kai Show.
Yes, and prayers to you and your family in South Carolina.
Thank you very much, and we need to pray for Charleston.
Absolutely. That's
thank you. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye. That's Jay Colton Palmer. He's a freelance reporter for the Chicago Crusader and other media outlets. This gave us a backdrop to the tragic shooting that happened that left 9 people dead in Charleston, South Carolina. We'll definitely have him back on because I'm sure when he comes back,
he'll have a lot.
The insight he's going to have is even more information. Sure. This is the Maya Kai Show. Stay tuned. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to jump into Food for Thought segment.
All right, I like it.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. You see that black boy over there running scared, his old man in a bottle. He done quit his 9 to 5, he drink full time, and now he's living in a bottle. See that black boy over there running scared, his old man got a problem, and it's a bad one. He ain't done pawned off damn near everything, his old woman waiting for a bottle. And don't you think it's a crime when time after time after time people in a bottle, there's people living in the bottle. Listen to me, see that sister, sure was fine, she's finally drinking wine in the bottle. She told me, oh man committed a crime, he's doing time, now she's hanging in a bottle. I seen her out there on the avenue all by herself, sure need help from the bottle. I seen her, the man tried to help her out, she cussed him out and hit him in the bottle. They turned to me, they asked me, kill her, don't you think it's a crime? No way. And time after time after time, people in the bottle, there's people showing up in the bottle. Give you another good example. You see that jet in a Rico suit, that damn near blown his to the bottle. He was a doctor helping young girls along. If they wasn't too far gone to have problems. But the offenders of the dollar eagle said, what you doing, man, illegal. Now he's in the bottle. And now we watch him every day. He's trying to chase the prisons away from the bottle. He turned to me, he said, man, now, don't you think it's a crime? The way time after time, friends of mine in the bottle. There's people showing up in the bottle. Come on, hit it a lick one time, stick. If you ever come looking for me, you know where I'm bound to be in the bottle. Turn around, look around on any corner. If you see some brother looking like a goner, it's gonna be me. Sing the song. Na 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 na.